In an effort to bring you more car videos, we've dabbled in viewer vehicle submissions via our Savage Geese website. Now, it's very difficult for me as a one-person team to try to get through all these cars. It's just impossible. But there are certain people that Jack Singapore has screened, and go figure, this one happened to be a Korean female who is a business owner in Chicago, and she kind of focused on a female-centric transportation business. She had a BMW M550i that she brought to us, or actually shipped to us from Minnesota to do a review on. As a part of that, she came out here, and we spent some time talking, and I'm going to bring you a video of a discussion I had with her about the realities of why are there not more women in the car industry. So let's get started with that. Marianne, I'm glad you're here. And
I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate you bringing out your car, truthfully, joking aside. When you contacted me, I did a little research on you. And
your credit score is over 800.
Your credit score is over 800. You own a BMW, so clearly
Clearly I have a lot of money.
Right, you're very...
Just not M5 money.
In terms of being into cars, you're clearly into cars in your own way. How did you get started in this?
Ironically, I think it was a boy. My first introduction to BMWs was my boyfriend in high school at the time had the E46 M3, or his parents did.
Okay.
He got to drive it. And even though I didn't know enough about cars, I just knew that that was a great car without knowing any of the specifications. Then I saw the price tag and I was like, oh, it's got to be a good car, right?
Yeah,
and who knows, that model is actually, as you guys know, one of the most celebrated M3s ever. I think also I come from a history, I had my own transportation business in Chicago, and so I think being a livery driver, you definitely learn cars, even if they're tailored toward the livery or limo industry, and you start to know what that industry preferences to cars are, that client preference to cars are, and that definitely made me appreciate nicer cars. And it spoiled me because I got to drive a new car every year.
So now you have this is your own personal car, this is not a company car.
Correct.
And you started a business, even though that really wasn't what you were kind of into in terms of career-wise.
I never thought I would be doing a business, let alone, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and I never thought I would be doing, quote unquote, a job that the Department of Labor would quote as unskilled, even though I definitely think there's so much skill and effort necessary to perform the job, and perform the job well. I went to school, I went to a competitive university. I think I did everything right on the track of life to get that cushy corporate job, to get that office job at 9 to 5. And maybe it was the fields I was in or the industries that I was in, but I never really felt such satisfaction. The thing I most enjoyed, the one thing I enjoyed most about my work was the idea that we were people transporting other people. And I really don't think there's anything more personal than that.
But you're not in that anymore.
I'm not. And that was one of the most hardest things to say goodbye to when I had to say goodbye to the city of Chicago. Yeah. And so I think this car is kind of, for me, as you guys talk about, cars tend to be an extension of the person's identity.
Yeah.
So I think for me, this was a good transition out of the limo industry, so I could drive something that I could kind of identify and claim as a personal good daily drive, but still have a little bit of that prestige.
Okay. All right, now that we're on the couch, let's get into it. Why do you think that women are less involved in this industry?
Well, I think there are a lot more women involved in the industry. There's just less visibility. I think a lot of it also has to do with language, even just the way cars are marketed. So decades ago, there's been marketing slogans, and this is documented, such as, "A car so simple, even a woman can drive it." And clearly the framework behind that slogan comes from someone who views cars and women as objects,
yeah,
and doesn't really allow for a female voice in that context. And I think even though we may not see such blatant sexism remarks like publicly, we still see a evolution or de-evolution of these comments when we hear questions posed to women like, why is that your husband's car? Is that your boyfriend's car? Do you know how to drive that car? Or even when car descriptors are in blogs, that's a chick's car. I wouldn't buy that car unless I was buying a skirt. Why are we genderizing cars? I think anyone can appreciate, torque that can move a heavy hunk of metal, right?
Yeah.
And I think that although the car industry in general has allowed women or valued women as consumers, when it comes to allowing them an authoritative place at the table, such as anything with car design or engineering or mechanical aspects of the car, it's been a different conversation.
So how does it really make you feel? And I understand the
Excluded, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, as you spoke to earlier, excluded, it's frustrating. Because, again, why are we genderizing cars? And even with the history of cars, there's always been women involved. So I was reading that we all know Carl Benz invented one of the first horseless automobiles or wagons, but actually his wife, Bertha Benz, was the one who helped finance that project and finance the research, and she did it with her dowry money. But she lost the ability to apply for the patent because she was married, and by German law didn't allow that. Bertha Benz also, at just the age of 39, she made a 65-mile journey, the very first journey with that automobile. She just followed the wagon track. She took her 2 sons to visit her mother. And that trip was deemed illegal because she didn't have written permission from the German government or her husband, which I guess was required at that time.
No, I understand what you're saying.
We
and
need
I think,
to celebrate these stories, and I don't think that's common knowledge when people talk about cars, because there has to be more stories like these about women involved and with hands-on.
it's about awareness. Like you kind of bring that up, and there's a lack of awareness, and the reality is, look what's changed, at least in Western culture, in the past 120 years. I mean, if you really look at that short period of time, and I think we give ourselves too much credit as humans, our ability to do things. We over-celebrate our successes and kind of ignore the failures way too often. We have short memories, but the injustices and the evils that we were capable of in the past, like I said, just even 130 years is insane where we're at now, and I don't think we're evolving as fast as like our noodles are. Like, clearly you're educated and you're well-spoken and have a passionate desire about these issues, but I don't think that a lot of people have caught up to that level to really kind of delve into some of these things. And what do you do? I guess that's my next question. How do you get more women involved in this stuff? How do you make them more a part of the conversation, where they're not just kind of in the background? I mean, even if they're pulling the strings, that they're still there, but how do you get them more on the forefront?
I think visibility. I think you guys even just featuring me, just your basic woman who just, although maybe I know I'm not able to speak to the technical ability, to the technical level and appreciation of cars that you and Jack can, but I'm clearly passionate, it's exciting. But then we also need to recognize and give more visibility to the women who have succeeded despite being women in a male-dominated industry.
I think a lot of that is what this is about. Sometimes people get bent out of shape when we talk about some of the things. Like you said this, you're a BMW fangirl for the car.
Blindly.
Blindly. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that attach their own self-esteems, their own kind of, the car is an extension of them. So when we get into certain nuances or things like, why do manufacturers do this? They're either they cheap out, they're cost cutting, they're not really thinking about it, or they're just blatantly copycatting.
Yeah.
A lot of people get bent out of shape about that. So it's very difficult, and we talked about this kind of yesterday off camera, is you have to be very, very careful how you talk about certain things, because you don't want to talk down to your audience. You want to try to express something where you can make an emotional connection, or they can relate to it without really saying, hey, you are the problem, or you made a bad decision, or this is junk, and having it affect somebody they tune out instantly. And I think the gender discussion is very, very sensitive.
But I think if you or any of your audience members asked the question to a wife, daughter, sister, how they feel about car culture, or have they faced discrimination on a sexist basis, I guarantee you they'll give you at least 3 examples.
You know, I totally understand the negative part of the female. You know, as a female, I've seen it. I've experienced it in the car stuff. You go to a dealership, almost 99% of the people in the service center are men, almost always, unless there's a girl as a receptionist. It's a girl answering the phone or scheduling. But most of the time, it's guy service advisors, and I've seen it with past relationships. Even a female that knew what she was talking about, they instantly see her and she's a target. She doesn't know anything, she's stupid. I can get more money out of her overselling her services. And then I've seen the other side too, and I don't want to totally like shit on it, but I've seen, you know, a female go into an AutoZone and the guys are clamoring to put on her windshield wipers or try to help, you know. But I feel like you hear more of the negative stories because I think it's more true that there's a lot more of that, whatever you want to call it, the gender discrimination against you, specifically in the car culture. What's the worst thing? What's the thing that grated on you the most as a female with the car stuff?
You know, when I was driving for Uber on the Uber Black platform, and guys would get in my car and they would just be like, they would say, I've never been in a car like this, especially for Uber. And they'd be, and then immediately, is this your boyfriend's car? Is this your husband's car? No. And well, does your husband buy it? Did he help you? Does he drive it? And literally at the time I was like, my husband can't drive it. Only because he doesn't have, you know, the commercial insurance for it. He's not livery. This car has livery tags. He doesn't have a chauffeur's license to drive it. And I was like, why? Because if you were to reverse that language, if you were to say, oh, look, a male driver, a male motor enthusiast, it sounds so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you say, oh, a female car enthusiast, a female driver, that's still somewhat of a novelty. And then I think the way our society is, because I do believe we are in a heteronormative patriarchy. I hate to put that framework and throw those words out there but I will firmly stand by, I believe that we are operating in that world, in that context, that if you saw a female engineer who was fully capable, who had all the vocabulary, who had all the terminology, who knew her shit through and through, but she wasn't attractive and she didn't dress well, she would catch so much stuff about not being a good presenter because she doesn't dress well. She doesn't care about her appearance. Oh, all she does is sit in a garage all day and look at cars. I mean, I feel like there's such a double standard with that. Whereas a woman, if she does present herself well, she does wear makeup. Oh, she must not. I mean, it's not immediately assumed that she would know a lot about cars.
And it's difficult because, again, 95% of the people that are watching this are men, right? Or males.
But I don't want to, I think 90% of your 95% audience is gonna have a moment of reflection. I don't think 90% of these men are gonna be like, we don't want women in this industry, and they won't. No, this is not a topic that we need to address or discuss. I definitely bet you everyone's thought about it at some point in time. It's just, how do we take action? How do we take those moments of reflection and really kind of spread more awareness, create more awareness around it? If it was an easy answer, I think we would have.
Yeah, we would. You're right. It would be figured out, and I would love to have more female presence in the industry. And from being on the seeing the manufacturer side, now that I'm doing this more professionally, if you can call it that, I've been able to meet women that have been in the industry, and the first thing that pretty much every single one of them have told me, they've had to work twice as hard as their male counterparts to get where they're at because of not only ego, but just the culture change, the culture of the car culture. And it's not just and I'm not going to get outside the automotive culture because then you open up this huge window, but it's not just there. It's a societal thing, like you mentioned.
Unfortunately, I think, when they say it's, I have to work twice as hard in my industry, I sadly have to say, what industry is that not true for women? There's majority of the industries are male dominated for whatever reasons. And again, that doesn't make it a bad thing. It just makes it harder for visibility and for us to even have these opportunities to be at the table with any opportunity for any authoritative or intellectual contribution.
So that's what I want. I feel like every industry that's skewed needs the balance. And I tell all the females I meet in the industry, I'm like, have you met people that haven't gotten, and I used to work in the computer science field and it's all men. another dominated field by men. And there was this constant discussion. How do you bring females into it? How do you get them more interested? Is it because they are not technically minded? Is it because their brains don't work that way? Is it because they're afraid that they don't want to get into a male-dominated culture and have this and have to work so hard, where it's just easier to go down the path of least resistance? I mean, it's the same thing. It really is the same thing. And I have yet to meet somebody really outside of you and my recent experience that's kind of like on the enthusiast side that really wants to be a part of it. They might dabble at it, like, oh, that would be cool, and then they find out what's involved with it, and it's like, no, I can't do that. And it's more that's really more the reality of it. Otherwise, I think we would see it a lot. I definitely would have more women on here, and I want more women involved into it because I like the balance. I like seeing the other side of things that I can't think of, that my brain is not capable of thinking until you're bringing it up. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, and I very much appreciate that, and I think this is like wonderful. Honestly, even you guys just showcasing car owners, right?
Yeah,
or females who are excited about their cars. But I think, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, or the day before, about when we were underneath the car. I do think part of this tracking for gender roles, it might be biological, yes, but I think a lot of it is influenced by society. If we just even look at the way toys are marketed to children, I think it starts very young, and it's hard to break that. So as we all know, stereotypically, and it's getting better, especially recently, it's been getting a lot better, but there has been specific toys marketed towards men, or towards boys and towards girls.
Yeah.
And the girls are always in pink, and they're usually shopping oriented, and all the car and engineering toys are always oriented towards boys. And there might not be a need to genderize toys or to put kids in these roles and track them so early. That's also...
It's indoctrinating. I mean, everything's indoctrinating. If what you grow up with tends to be what you follow as you get older, at least that foundation is there, and it influences your choice as an adult.
Yeah.
I do believe that, and I go back to what I said before. We just don't have enough history. We don't have enough generational time from when the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. Like, you're a new generation, and you're going to pass on that to the next generation of females, where it's going to be a little bit less. But I feel like I hate to say this, like my dad's age, the people of, the last generation that grew up in a time where maybe females didn't have a lot of rights, or they may have had rights on paper, but their true rights were not accepted in society. The same thing with African Americans. I mean, you could go down the list of minority injustices, and we're too close to that still, where certain generations were still attached to that, where we're not a clean sweep away from it. And I don't think until we get all of it out, it's not going to be me sitting here, it's going to be you sitting here, and then some guy's going to come on and be like, oh, I'm kind of into cars, it's for that to switch.
To your point, and we were talking about this yesterday, though, I mean, again, I just appreciate you guys offering to host me and to showcase more women voices on your platform, because I think even though I can't technically speak in detail like you guys can, I mean, I'm definitely clearly as enthusiastic and passionate.
Right.
I guarantee you there's so many other women out there. And then once we were kind of in this conversation more in detail, again, off camera,
Right,
you guys even admitted, hey, we had some people on who clearly, weren't able to speak to cars in detail or to the technical, like, statistics and knowledge base that we have, but we still feature them and we still gave them access to our platform. And so I just think whatever you can do within your sphere just to give more visibility really counts for so much.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think that's kind of a good place to end with this. Elizabeth took the time to come out here with her car, to ship it to me, to be here to talk. And I think if you are a female that is in this industry, whether you're professionally related into the industry, the car industry, or you're an enthusiast, and you have a car you want to feature and talk about some of these issues, hit us up through the website.
These guys are super cool to work with. And I think that, absolutely. And I think that one of the reasons why, I even wrote in was because just not only are you guys articulate and you clearly spend time with your structure and content building, but just a lot of car vlogs have a very machismo, just heteronormative kind of view or outlet. And that's great. And that will speak, that sometimes that gets me excited, and
Yeah.
you know, that speaks to certain demographics. But when you're just inundated with that, it kind of becomes one and the same. You don't want that to be the definition of that culture or that space, right? And so the fact that I found you guys so approachable and relatable, yeah, I was just really excited to be here. So.
Oh, I'm glad you get it. I mean, we're very sarcastic, and we have a lot of like hidden shit in there. But it's a lot of sarcasm towards pretty much every stereotype we find some type of
Because if you
humor
don't
in.
laugh at yourselves, you know,
Yeah.
then you are the ones taking yourselves too seriously.
Right, and we're not. I don't take this seriously.
Yeah,
at
as
all.
a BMW person, I definitely own every single stereotype, and I just laugh. Being an Asian driver, absolutely, and it saves me out of a lot of tickets. No, it's terrible.
I
but
would use it too if I was in your case, especially the English speaking element of it.
I'm like, hey, aren't you glad I'm in front of you? Because now there's no way I could possibly hit you. So you should let me go.
If you want to check out Elizabeth's Instagram, I'm going to put a link here, or her YouTube channel. She doesn't really participate in social media as much as she has because she's got a pretty decent professional career now. But if you want to check her out, she probably will start doing more.
Yeah, you guys have been inspiring me to like definitely.
Yeah,
get
she's
back
going to
on
go
it
home
and-
after this and delete all her social media accounts and disappear off the face of the earth.
No.